So it just turned 5:30, the micromanager.
She will not.
I'm gonna call the work session to order at 5:30 and 10 seconds.
Thank you. We're starting tonight. This work session is really to try and give you a little bit of insight into the details around the strategic plan. Like what are the objectives? What are the action steps that we're currently taking? It's a lot. So in the time frame that we have, what we've done is we've kind of broken each of the 4 goal areas, and we're having the folks present on a strategy. There's a lot more to this. So when this is all done, we'll also push out to you kind of the whole plan with all of the details for every single area. So you can also get a look at those. And we can come back and you can meet with the different area folks if you have more questions. But tonight, we're just trying to get you into it and beginning to look at how all of this is rolling out. But before we go there, I wanted to just kind of remind us of the pathway we took to get here. So it was like 5 years, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time, so I'm going to keep this moving. 5 years ago, we did the initial like 35 plus community meetings, went out and talked to staff, students, parents, and kind of came up with some initial our values, the district values. This is kind of the mission and vision, purpose and promise, same basic thing here. We came up with the maxims, the district values. From there, we did some work the last 2 years to begin to identify exactly what those values, what do they look like in students? Like, what are the student attributes in education across the United States? This is what we would call the 21st century skills. The things that they've identified that students need to have when they leave. Again, ours were critical thinker, communicator. Critical thinker and communicator is really around literacy, reading, writing, speaking. Collaborator, those are really common attributes for 21st century skills. The others, empathetic, resilient, and responsible, are much more Forest Grove centric. Those are things that came out of our communication with our community, that those were important values. Then last year, we took all of that work, and between January and June, we met with 58 different parents, community members, students, staff members, administrators, and we started to move through a strategic planning process. And it started with us inquiring. In December and January, we pushed out a lot of information to get data back. And then in January, we began to analyze that information. And then we worked as a group to kind of develop 4 goals. And the 4 goals that were developed by the strategic planning group are instruction and learning, behavioral health and wellness, family and student engagement. And the last one's kind of, it's really the goal around improving the way our organization works, building a resilient organization. Instruction and learning, there's lots of, again, after the pandemic, where our kids are at instructionally, there's lots of work for us to do in those areas. Behavioral health and wellness has been well defined for the last 4 years at least. Family and student engagement, we had a lot of interesting kind of conflicting feedback around this, partly because many of our parents are saying, no, we get your information, we understand what you're trying to do. And then there's another set of our parents that are saying, no, the way in which you're communicating with us is not meeting our needs. So this is, again, why it became one of our big goals here, is we know we have some work to do in that area. So that's how we came up with the 4 goals. The next thing that we did is we started to break that goal into some objectives, and then underneath those objectives are going to be some action steps. And I'm going to turn it over to the folks who are kind of in charge of those areas to kind of go from there.
Okay, we'll start with goal 1. Instead of breaking down every objective and strategy, we decided to just pull out one and talk deeply about it, answer any questions you may have, and then the next different people in cabinet will talk about their different goals. But this shouldn't be a surprise to everybody around the table. We've talked quite a bit about improvement efforts around instruction and learning. And so if you go down one more slide, we're talking about objective 3 here, which is build a MTSS framework that ensures student receive rigorous grade level instruction that leads to student academic growth and literacy in math. One strategy in that is specifically around literacy, and that's what I'm highlighting here today. So there are 5 action steps here. That doesn't mean that it's everything, but this is the end all be all. There's certainly more work happening beyond this, but the first one is we're holding 100% meetings to identify core instructional strategies based on data. We're actually going to talk about that quite a bit later today when we present on benchmark scores. But 100% meetings are when we bring grade level teams together and we're really talking about shifts in core instruction. So often you want to talk about intervention groups and those things, which are very important. But this is really about how are we improving core instruction. And then, being able to measure the success of those. Are they happening? What are some of the themes that come from those? We'll share that information with you later as well, but that's just an example. Second one is implement, train, and support M-Class Lectura, and STAR to drive instructional shifts. As you may know, we went from 7 different assessment tools to these 3. So we're going to make sure that we're implementing those 3 well, and that teachers are finding them useful in helping them make instructional shifts. The third one is around dyslexia. We've done lots of work already this year, trying to hone in what are our dyslexia gaps in services. How do we improve those? How do we improve our systems around dyslexia? The third is around dual language, supporting our dual language campuses, biliteracy, especially with this new adoption. Sometimes our dual language campuses feel like it's we're not taking into consideration some of those dual language implications. And so trying to bridge those gaps is a big part of our work around this objective and strategy. And last but not least, serving our ELL population and making sure that our instructional models line up with the science and reading and MTSS. So again, there's a lot of work to be done around here, but that's just a snippet, targeted action steps that we're taking as relates to this objective and strategy.
We didn't really talk about this. Do we want to, this is the work session. So do you want to, if you have questions, I also want to say that again, we're going to give you, we'll share the document that has all of these broken out, but there's, again, for every single one of these objectives, there's multiple strategies. And for every one of those strategies, there's some action steps going on. So there's a lot rolling on here.
I think if people have questions as we're going, they should just ask, and then ask questions at the end too.
Perfect.
That's fine with you. Does anybody have any questions at this time?
I do. So you say assess and invest in dyslexia learning.
Yeah.
What does that look like? What are you doing?
So, so we are having conversations across the system about how our dyslexia services are working. Give an example. We've been talking with 504 coordinators, also with student services. How do we know that our dyslexic students exist in our system? How do we capture that data, and how do we know we're responding? That is definitely something that we can improve and are working to improve, because those systems aren't always aligned, and shedding light to that and making that shift. A couple of weeks ago, we hosted a dyslexia learning session for teachers. It was very well attended. We had about 30 people. Thank you to Kate and Christy for joining us as well as board members. Again, trying to build that learning and understanding of dyslexia in our system and how it fits into our reading adoption, and how it fits into MTSF and how we're supporting our students.
So do you have some concrete that you're doing?
So what the training is something concrete, being
Well,
able to do that.
that identified,
Yeah,
but the issue that I still have is we're talking about it and I don't see, I made a suggestion about using our reading specialist 1 hour a day, because what ends up happening, as you well know, and everybody knows it for state, because I've been talking about it forever, is that kids have to be 2 years behind before they can even qualify for special ed. So now I know of 2 kids at Dilley that have both been retained and are severely dyslexic. And Mrs. Thompson at the high school was evaluating them. And it just seems very unfair that these kids that are of average intelligence have to repeat because we don't provide what they need. And so this is one school.
Yeah.
And, you know, I gave you, when you were first here, you know, instruction about, data about, 1 in 20 is dyslexic. And I just keep hearing we're gonna do something. You know, we've talked to Kim, we've talked to, Elena. And, so how long are we gonna kick this down the road?
So
Let me grab a little bit of this. So again, the early literacy money, that's part of this next step is the hiring of the reading specialists for the schools. But we've got to, so it's coming, Kate.
All right, I'm just a little impatient.
I know.
I don't want to die on the job before it happens.
No,
okay?
but again, this next step here about,
I don't the counter about this.
no, it's fair. I just want you to know that again, this next step of the early literacy grant, there'll be general fund money that also, because the early literacy money won't pay for everything that we need here. But that's actually the piece where we can begin to develop the reading specialist time to begin to help kids who aren't necessarily in with a student with an IEP at this point, but we can already see that there's reading difficulties. And it's that design that we need to create here. That is right out in front of us.
No, and that's what I was gonna say. I think as we design the early literacy piece, that's come up quite a bit about being able to provide specific supports to dyslexic students. Once we have those positions in place, we haven't even applied for that grant yet. It's not open to apply yet. But I will say, I'll also add that it's on this pool, right?
I'm
It's
glad
here.
to see it in print.
Right?
I really am. And I will say that the workshop that Elena and you put on was very good.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a beginning, but,
absolutely.
it's hard to see kids repeating
Yeah.
a class and see motivation and self-esteem. And so they don't qualify for the 3rd grade, 4th grade, and there's a lot of lost learning and a lot of behaviors that shouldn't be there if they were being provided with the instruction.
I agree. And what I will say is, I appreciate the urgency. And it's part of our goals and action steps. We're gonna make progress this year.
I hope.
Other questions?
One additional about the progress piece and just measurable outcomes for progress. So, and I know that shifts as we move through the process, but is there, or could there be something like a 3rd column to say, in 6 months, like even dyslexia system or 100% meetings, because of that, we would in 6 months expect that all kinders with dyslexia 100% have been at least identified, or so a measurable student outcome in addition to the success measures that may again change as we realize, oh, we can't identify it, but what in our mind are we thinking for January of a target for something that's literally a student outcome? And that, could we see what we might think that could be for each success measure, like the 100% meetings. So from those meetings, schools are working on their SIP plans and they have their own goals and they're going to be able to share, here's what we're doing based on these meetings. Could we see that piece side by side, just to be able to say, so in January, if we are doing 100% of meetings and strategies, we expected the district to identify the top 3 strategies in K-6 that are common amongst all of our schools by January. Something where it's very
So you're gonna get the data. You're
based
gonna
on the
get,
data.
so in November, and I'm trying to remember right now, but we're gonna report out on all of these, like where we're at. And so we'll tell you, here's what's happened so far. Like November, February, and June are the 3 times that we'll actually, with every single one of these action steps, be reporting to you, here's what's happened. So you'll get that info.
So in addition to that, and that's what I guess I'm asking, in addition to that, like, here's what has happened, but right now, what do you expect should happen based on the theory of practice? And does that match? I mean, it's just a checkpoint to say, we know what we're gonna do, what actions we're gonna take, but what are we expecting in student outcomes based on those actions in even a short amount of time? And the expectation might be super reasonable, small, but something specific. I'm just wondering, like, by January, I know we'll get the actions.
Time-bound kind of goal.
Yeah, like, I know you guys already have an idea of what you would expect. I'd just like to see if we could just put it there so we could see where you're going with those actions. And I think that's the accountability piece of the board. You know, that's just an additional layer for a board to be able to look at and communicate to the community, like, here's what we're hoping. And in November, based on what's been able to happen, based on resources and staffing and whatever, we're gonna have to adjust. You know, we may or may not be identifying every kid this year with dyslexia, but we think we can identify 40%. And then in spring, what are we gonna do with those 40? We think by June, based on the data, because we have to see what level they are in that dyslexia profile, we think it's reasonable to assign reading specialists to work with this percent.
See, I think that's what the action step is. I mean, I do understand that you're putting a number on that, but the whole 100% means to identify core instructional strategies. You're going to hear what happened. Like, did that happen? Did it not? Is it going to happen? I don't know. We can sit down and talk a little bit about that, Christy, and see what we come up with. Yep,
Next,
I think so.
wait for Enrique. Okay, I think most of you have seen this. We have behavioral health and wellness, the system in general, and then we have 3 objectives. And if you go to the next slide. Goal number 2, objective 3, build and refine a tiered system of social, emotional, and behavioral health support that integrates into the district's MTSS framework. Strategy 1, we're focusing on here, expand the student social emotional learning surveys grade 3 to 8 to focus on the whole child during core instruction meetings. So the SEL surveys are student competency and well-being surveys that we give to students grades 3 to 8. And I have to give all the credit here to Elena and Cassie because they have worked really hard to integrate both literacy and SEL together during 100% meetings. And that's really what you do when you want to look at the whole child, right? And so we can be efficient about how we look at kids, and then also we can plan our instruction and strategies around that in the classroom. So literacy teachers and the SEL folks can talk about instructional strategies and creating spaces where you can have both kinds of strategies supporting each other instead of in isolation. Here are action steps to expand the SEL survey to 3rd and 4th grade at Dilley, 4th grade at Harvey Clark, 3rd to 6th at Echo Shaw, 6th grade at Tom McCall. And then we're also doing a second house at Neil Armstrong. So we have, NAMS has begun implementing that. We just actually finished our 100% meeting process. The SEL survey is actually our benchmark. It's our core benchmark result. So that's what we use to kind of plan what we're doing in the future. And then the other action step is to support implementation and facilitation school grade levels in their 2nd year of SEL. So we have Joseph Gale, and Joseph Gale is really where we're targeting a lot of the instructional strategies because they've been doing this survey. And we get feedback from teachers. We do a survey right after 100% meetings to find out how they felt that process went, if they got what they needed out of that process. And we also look at the survey data itself and share that with teams. And then teams choose which instructional strategies they're going to be working on.
I don't see Cornelius.
Cornelius is not implementing at the current time. We're planning on starting that next fall.
Oh,
Yeah.
So with your core benchmark set and done, then from that point, you'll set your goals for what your expectations are for each one of those areas then?
Well, what happens is it's hard to get into too much detail, but so a grade level will look at their survey, their data, they choose which areas they want to look at. they'll look at that data and decide what kinds of things they're gonna focus on during that instructional period, right? And then they'll report back. So you're talking about core, so you're not talking interventions, you're talking about the core instruction. Then they work with their coaches, the lit coaches and the student success coaches to help implement those things in the classroom. So if they're talking about engagement strategies, that's something they want to increase. Student teacher relationships, how would you do that? So the coaches work with teachers on ways to do that.
So in terms of time, I'm just thinking when do they do this?
So we have 3 benchmark, we align it with literacy. And so ideally the goal in MTSS is to have math, literacy, SEL all in one meeting, and we're working towards that. But we do that 3 times a year. So fall, winter, spring, we get benchmark data and we survey all along the way. So.
The, talk a little bit about the SEL standards that are, because again, this is all linked to standards that kids have to have.
So ODE is requiring student social emotional learning standards, and they're built on the CASEL core competencies, which I don't want to get into too much of that because I can't do it off the cuff. But we developed our behavioral health and wellness system over the CASEL, around the CASEL competencies, excuse me. So we're already kind of ahead of that game, but they are rolling out SEL surveys to be implemented across districts. So we're working with CNI to help us integrate those things. So we have a lot of that work already done, but it is coming from the state. So all districts will be required to have those.
So the SEL survey is a national survey or a state survey or an in-house survey?
No, it can be national. It's based on Panorama, which is the data system we use. It's the platform we have for MTSS. And they have various surveys, and they have different scales that are all research-based, and they can be normed nationally. So you can compare yourself based on each individual response. So our teams get together and choose which areas, because there's quite a few, and then they choose different scales they want to use for that survey. So it's local right now for us, but if we wanted to compare it to anybody else using that same system, we could compare that.
Very good. All right, moving on.
Okay, goal 3 is mine, so family and student engagement. Our 3 objectives are kind of based around engagement, working with our community to increase our partnerships that will benefit our students. And then number 3 is focusing on attendance. We're going to focus tonight on objective 1, strategy 1. So create new and strengthen existing avenues of engagement for students, staff, and families, which will foster a sense of belonging, participation, and identity safety. And then the strategy 1 would be create some representative groups tasked with meeting in person. Basically, let's have more in-person meetings so that we are increasing our opportunities for our families to engage with the district leadership, be that superintendent, be that with principals. As Dave mentioned at the beginning, the feedback we had during this engagement process was we had a group of people saying, hey, you guys are doing a good job. We had another section that, hey, you're just not quite meeting our needs. So this strategy is continue to do what's working well, but augment it with some new or resurrecting old opportunities for community members, parents, families to engage with the district. This first one, action step was the superintendent will attend existing parent group meetings to be visible, show support, and offer a forum to have two-way communication. This is kind of trying to capitalize on the current, existing, and successful parent group meetings that are already happening. For example, our TPAC, our migrant TPAC meetings, our Juntos program, and some of our school-based PTO meetings that are happening monthly. For example, I've just heard a report from our TPAC meeting back in September or early October, actually. The last meeting they had over 80 families or 80 members, community members show up for their TPAC meeting. In the Juntos program, we had over 60. So these are easy wins for us to have Superintendent Parker be there, to be visible, to show support, but also open up that two-way communication where they can hear a little bit about our strategic plans or anything else we want to communicate to the community, but also have them have a forum to ask questions, to clarify things that they're not clear on or opportunities that they would like to see transpire in the district. So we have some goals around those, how total meetings that Superintendent Parker can be at, as you see there. Second one is, we've done this in the past as having some coffee with the superintendent, just a workshopping the title. It can be something that lots of other districts do it. It's just going throughout the community, throughout Forest Grove and Cornelius at different coffee shops. Again, just another forum for parents to come in, have their questions answered, and have that two-way communication with Superintendent Parker. One that didn't make it here, but it's not mine, so we had a little miscommunication, is reconvene parent advisory committees. Again, we've had these in the past and they've gone away with past superintendents and then with COVID. So kind of resurrecting those to have opportunities for parent groups to come in, have specific agendas on what we want to work on with them. They have input on those agendas. So that, again, we're just trying to foster an environment where they can have additional opportunities above and beyond what we're already doing in communication that happens mainly digitally, and having those forums be more input and have the two-way communication opened up in a more robust way.
Any questions for David?
What tool did we use, David, to get that information that we had some strong strengths and some weaknesses? What did we use?
In our process, we did use some surveys, but also we did a lot of one-on-one empathy interviews. But we have also included into the climate and culture survey some specific questions that will get at this that we can use for a benchmark and continue to see our progress as we move forward. That way families can say, yes, I've taken advantage of these opportunities. I've come to these meetings, I've engaged with district personnel, or I've had opportunities to talk with superintendents.
So that's the reason I asked the question.
Yeah.
So some type of benchmark is presently this is the feedback we've gotten. These are the deficient areas. This is how we plan to address those deficient areas. And then what kind of improvement are we going to see or not based on what we're doing?
Yeah, so I think even before we get these established, make sure that we're having the communication go out to advertise the opportunity so that people know, in doing those through multiple things. Because right now we do well in pushing it out digitally through the schools also, but I think it needs to be, we need to get a little bit more creative and help rely on some of our folks who do actual phone calls out to families and invite them specifically, like our migrant and Puntos program. They do a lot of one-to-one communication, which takes a lot of effort, but they get results to get folks out. So I think it's going to take a planning, communication, and then have people take advantage of that and then measure that when the climate and culture survey comes out and adjust from there.
And so just so we haven't really talked about it much, but we're right in the middle of kind of putting the finishing touches on climate and culture survey. In that, we've broken it out by all of these strategic plans so that we will get information back from students, staff, parents around these so that we have information about the way people are feeling about it. We're still working with kind of how the staff one's looking and are we asking all the right questions there? So that's still the piece that we're working with, but we're right in the middle of developing that so that we can push it out and then get feedback. Yep.
Do the migrant calls, make one-on-one calls to get 80 of those people in 50 countries?
They do a lot of one-to-one communication. I don't know exactly how many calls they do, but
I mean, that was a lot of people going.
a major strategy that they have.
Definitely someone to learn from, utilize. All right, thanks, David.
So I have goal 4, which is create a resilient organization and creating collaborative, resilient, responsive environments. We have 3 objectives. I'm going to focus on recruit, develop, and retain staff who are connected and committed to the success of our diverse student population. But you can see the other 2 objectives, cultivate equitable, healthy, and resilient systems that encourage shared ownership and collaboration, as well as objective 3, ensure safe and welcoming learning environments that foster a sense of belonging and community for all. So under goal 4, objective 1, recruit, develop, and retain staff who are connected and committed to the success of our diverse student population. And strategy 1, recruit and retain diverse and highly qualified teachers, staff, and administrators. Our action step is to attend job fairs that have diverse licensed teacher candidates using hiring pools to fill most pressing needs. Examples, special ed, ELD, dual language proficient, etc. And then our success measures will be the actual hiring rate of diverse candidates and enact hiring practices to fill the most pressing needs. So for instance, this fall, we went ahead and collected the diverse background characteristics of our new hires, both licensed as classified as well as administration. So we're tracking that, and we're going to go ahead and use that as baseline data to see what kind of impact we're making. Also, we're expanding the attendance at job fairs in the region to enhance district presence. 3 of us attended for the first time in a long time the Tacoma Job Fair, and it meant we went there during spring break, but we were amazed at how many Oregon products graduates that went to PLU or University of Washington or Washington State. And we're talking mid-March, and they were there, and we were talking to diverse educators. And so what we're also looking at is offer hard to fill budgeted positions as soon as possible to ensure hire. So, yeah, go ahead.
Mind if I ask?
Yeah,
I'm wondering why we wouldn't add hiring and retaining,
yes,
because the issue, if you look at the data across the districts, it's not so much the hiring part of it, it's the retaining part of it. So I don't, is that something?
that will be lower. Some other ones that we aren't on that because this is a screen, but it's in that spreadsheet is like new teacher in service, daily exit surveys during the new teacher in service. What information helped you transition to our district? What else do you need? And do you have any questions about what we covered day 1? And then we did that day 2. We're going to have 3 additional surveys. Also, we're looking at exit surveys for both licensed as well as classified and asking. We do have a tomorrow afternoon, some of us are looking at an outside product that will literally, exactly what you're talking about. It's a survey that goes out to all teachers and staff. All teachers, licensed staff, and it's 0 to 100%. In terms of 100%, I'm not going anywhere based on the survey results, down to 78%. Okay, anything less than 78%, depending upon their responses, you're in danger of losing that staff member, of retaining them. It's kind of a wake-up scale. And then they disaggregate that information by school and by question. And so a principal can take a look at those results, or Dave or I or Arturo or Kim, cabinet members, and it shows areas of red, high alert, we've got a problem here. Yellow, you need to keep an eye on this and what factors are leading into that, as well as green. We're doing great. And what was really interesting, looking at that summative data, it shows that each site's different. What might be an issue at one site isn't an issue at another site, but it gives you that early warning system, if you will, to the building principal and the leadership team at that school. Hey, this is an area we need to address. It might not be popping up elsewhere. And so the question is, can we integrate those kind of questions more effectively into our climate survey? Or is this something that is worth the investment?
I would think that each discipline is different too.
Yeah.
Each in terms of special ed, ELL, there are different types of things that keep that group of teachers around.
Yeah. And then,
I'm sorry.
and no, you're good. And then the next, beginning with the end in mind, and let's take a look, what metrics is going to show us whether we're making an impact is they do have a detailed in-depth exit survey, which it breaks it out into school level factors for reasons of not retaining the staff member, district level factors, or personal level factors, and it's all research based. So Dave Parker, myself, Arturo, and others are taking a look at that tomorrow. And then we're also looking at our filter in terms of our existing climate survey, but there's more action steps under that than just the ones that are present there.
So what about the new teachers? How are you going in and supporting the new teachers? I mean, a survey is one thing, but when you have 5 IAP kids in your classroom and they're a new teacher and
Yeah.
don't know anyone in the building, how are you supporting them and making them feel like, you know, I want to stay in this district because I feel supported. I feel that when I ask for help, I get help, et cetera.
Those are exact, thank you for stealing.
Okay, sorry.
Ongoing new teacher surveys in the fall, winter, and spring that do exactly that. You know, what supports are working for you? What needs aren't being addressed? Examining that data as a district, you know,
And
sharing
then the
that
principal
information.
goes into
So,
the
Kate,
classroom and help them.
So the other thing that's going on here is we have our different TOSAs in the different areas. So you have the student success coaches all meet with new teachers, new staff on an ongoing basis, and they have interactions about what's going on. Yes, John's definitely surveying them because we want to figure out kind of what supports are there. But both the lit coaches, the student success coaches, they're all very involved with our first year teachers. I don't know if I left anything out there, but that's the,
And that new teacher survey data will definitely be shared with TOSAs and see now in student service.
So they, from the survey, they go and follow up then.
Yes, exactly. With the goal of retention. Yep, and then also continue to use hiring tools as flexible means for streamlining hires. We did this year very effectively in terms of in August, particularly late August. There were individuals that, you know, we hired, literally hired, and then accepted a job elsewhere, closer to home. And then we had to pivot quickly, or new resignations, or new retirements. So we did hiring tools in elementary teachers, dual language program teachers, ELD teachers, and we even did one with nurse candidates. And the nurse candidate, I think, how many times we pivoted him, like 3. But it allowed us to go quickly. You know, everybody was given consideration in that pool for the position.
Like,
And
a
we
little
can
bit
go-
more, but like, what is a hiring pool?
So
Tell me how that
elementary,
works.
elementary dual language program teachers or our dual language program.
How do they get in the pool?
Well, they apply for the position and it's at elementary level, not necessarily at a given site. So they would interview, you know, in that pool. And what would happen is they would go ahead and interview, take the top candidate, and we would still have those other candidates in pool. We didn't have to go back out, repost, wait 5 days. I mean, each time it pushes it further and further back. So that, you know, we're now into the start of school, or even after the start of school, we could still go back to that base of candidates. Larger district. Absolutely, yep. And it allowed us to pivot very quickly from, literally, yeah, we've accepted this position, to 2 days later, the principal calls me and says, oh my goodness, they backed out, you know, they've accepted Beaverton. Can I go to the next candidate that, you know, is in that pool? Can I drop in that pool without having to post the position? And we were able to pivot very quickly because it was extremely competitive in terms of.
So do you post it in August, like August 15th, and say, looking for elementary teachers,
Open to
open until full, and then you might have 5
multiple.
positions.
Yep.
And then you did the same thing for the high school.
High school was, that was a little bit, it's not as challenging at the high school level to fill social studies or language arts. But the elementary level, particularly dual language, ELD, like right now, we still have ELD positions and special education positions. that we have filled with temporary teachers that are not fully credentialed or licensed in those positions. If we were to post these and to get out early at the job fair, like the one in Tacoma, we were in a position that we could move very quickly on those candidates in March and get them lined up, and instead of in late June. And we kept those resumes that we collected, but a lot of them were picked up, if not the vast majority. So these are some strategies that helped us this year in terms of hiring, and as well as, you know, retaining. How are we doing in terms of retaining the new teachers that we have hired? How are we supporting them? Because we definitely want to keep them.
So this goal has split between a couple of different departments. So on this one, we're gonna have Eileen, I think, fill in kind of some of her one of these. So I'm gonna turn it over to Eileen.
So typically I would probably report on objective 2, the resilient organization and aligning strategic plan and budget. But tonight I wanted to report on our physically safe schools and creating safe environments. We've been working with our safety and security committee here at the district office for the last year on talking to people and looking at our bond comments and trying to figure out what that scope of work is to create physically safe and secure environments within our buildings, facilities wise. So we started last December and we met with representatives from different levels and talked about what physical pieces of the building do we need to make improvements on. And we did some listening and then we did some prioritization, and it's anything from the security trio, our cameras. Do we have enough cameras in the buildings? Are our doors working properly? Do we have the right door handles on our doors? Is the exterior what it should be? So do we have bushes in the wrong spots? Do we have our buildings approachable, but you know where to enter from? So is all of our signage appropriate across the district, from our fields to our playgrounds, so the entry doors? So really looking at all of the security areas within the buildings, looking at our playgrounds, just kind of all of those elements. I think cell phones, do we have cell access in the buildings? Do we have DAS access in the buildings? And so once we met with the group, we started looking at what all those things were and trying to define what is our plan, what is our scope of work that we're going to do. And since then, we've been doing assessment. We've hired a safety and security contractor to come and help us with the security trios, the camera and the intrusion system. Do we have the right intrusion system? Do we have one that's integrated with the 2 systems where we have ease of access, so principals and administrators can go in and view things really quickly. So they've come on board, I believe it was in June. They've done assessments of our cameras. Where do we need to add cameras? Where do we need to change cameras out? So we have all of our assessments just about done. We're working on all of the quotes for everything. Within this, it also includes the NAMS vestibule transition, and we are well into planning on that. We'll have the Neil Armstrong vestibule added next summer, where we're moving the office from kind of down the hallway to be right up in front, so they have community members and people would go through the vestibule, through the office, then into the building, so there's some more control there. That will happen next summer, so we are well into that project already. So our goal is really to have a lot of this completed by this time next year. And then the last part of it is really about the education and educating our stakeholders and educating our students and our staff and our community about the importance of the human contributors in that system. Because we can put all of the elements in place, we can lock doors, we can have badge access, but as soon as the door's propped open, it's not working. You put in all of that stuff for nothing. So the human error is the one piece at the end that we would like to start. We haven't designed the education plan around that yet, but we will be working towards the education component to reduce the human risks. So that's kind of where we're at with this. It's pretty exciting that at the same time as our strategic plan implementation, we have the bond to be able to support these investments.
So the next steps for us look like this. We'll share the complete action plan with board members. And then as you look at it, there's a couple things. You can schedule time with any of the folks who are running if you have more questions. We'll come back in November and we're gonna have to report out on all of the different areas. So you'll also get information about all of the specifics on these things. But just wanted to make sure that if you had questions about what something was, you have that ability to go back and see that or ask questions about it. But then we'll report on November 27th, kind of where we're at. Questions?
No? If there is nothing else, we will adjourn at 6:15. Very thoughtful.